John D'Agostino has the button. If it goes to a flop, he will be last to act. That's in his favor. He's the short stack. That's in his disfavor.
Well, this is
the play right here, Howard, is probably raise. A call here is only trouble.
Folds.
He folds. He folds. Wow. An ace-5 suited. But you know, you are right. This is not the kind of hand, Michael, where you just call with ace-5. It's not, you know, although it's suited, and that might have enticed me to call and try and take a flop. I think I might have been tempted to move in or fold. It's not a great flop-taking hand because if you are up against the better ace, you know, you're kind of rooting for the card that's going to get you in trouble. Or maybe if you're worried about that, then you're thinking about the 5. But then if you're up against a hand like 2 8s or 2 10s, now you hit your 5 and you get in trouble. It's a tough hand to play after the flop. And Phil was going to make him commit a lot of his chips there.
When John D'Agostino comes home and watches this broadcast on his VCR, he will be very pleased that he threw away an ace-5 in that spot when he finds out that Phil Ivey had the ace-6.
You know, we don't know what Phil would have done if John had moved all in there. It was going to be a pretty sizable re-raise. It may have won the pot. We know that, though, because we saw the cards.
And so did our viewers at home.
Right.
Yes, they did.
So we're going to get a flop here as both check.
Yep, this was a limp pot.
Flop coming up. 5, 4,
2, 4, 5. So.
And they've both flopped a straight draw. They both need a 3.
John check. That's
20,000.
This is the kind of situation where heads up, this is a pretty good semi-bluffing situation. He needs a 3 for a straight. You can put a lot of pressure on Ivey with a raise.
50 more.
Raise
50,000 more.
Total 70,000.
Kid is playing some poker, Howard.
Yes, he is. This might be a spot for Ivey to just duck on out of here. I just don't see him calling, and does he really want to double him up with 9 high? He seems to have him under control. This might be a spot to just duck out.
Yeah, and he does.
Yeah.
Nice call. So D'Agostino will take the money. Thank you very much. And this thing continues to be a sparring match right now, and you keep waiting for the heavy blows to start being thrown. Welcome back. This is the American Poker Championship. We're at Turning Stone Resort Casino in Verona, New York. We're down to 2 players and 2 outstanding players. Phil Ivey, most poker fans know about him. You don't know about the other half of this matchup, John D'Agostino, who is hanging in there. More than hanging in there, playing really solid poker, even on losing hands.
He's playing very well, John D'Agostino. You know, he's only 21. This is his 2nd appearance on national TV playing poker. You know, there are a lot of professional players who've been playing for years who haven't even been on TV playing poker yet.
Ever since Howard Lederer started broadcasting, I haven't seen him on TV.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Actually, joking aside, Howard, you did enter this tournament. I watched you go out. You had the best hand.
I always have the best hand.
A guy took an inferior hand and ran you down. Let's face it, there is an element of luck and chance in this game. That's part of the appeal.
And Michael, that means you need to have the long view, and that was exactly what Phil Ivey was talking about. He plays poker every day. He's been playing for years. He's a young man, but in poker years, he's been around. He's been playing in some of these big games for many, many years, and he understands that what happens today isn't the be-all and end-all. It's a big, long game. It's hard for a guy like John D'Agostino to have that long view. He hasn't been around long enough.
Ivey said he's only played 6 years, which I realize in poker terms is a while. But
yeah, well, he has packed in a lot of poker into those 6 years. He plays more poker than just about anyone I know.
Yeah, that's approximately 1,800 days worth of work.
Yeah.
Right. He does not take a day off.
Well, the flop.
Players check. Turn card. An ace of hearts.
And an ace of hearts, 4 hearts.
John D'Agostino has hit a flush draw. He is going to take a shot at this spot.
15,000.
Don't think Phil Ivey's going to let him stick around. And he's counting out a raise of some kind.
You raise.
And this should put an end to this pot.
55,000 more.
The blue chips are 1,000. The pink are 5,000.
Right, now, our viewers at home may be wondering, what's John D'Agostino thinking about there? Why didn't he just throw his cards away immediately as soon as Phil Ivey raised? Well, you don't want to let Phil Ivey know that you just got caught with nothing, because that gives Phil Ivey information that he can use later. Oh, so when he bets like that, he has absolutely nothing. You at least want to give it, a few seconds. You don't want to overdo it. Don't spend 30 seconds, but give it that 5 seconds. Just a few seconds before you throw your cards away. Aren't you giving away too much information for free?
I have found that the best poker players are like supercomputers who are really good at recognizing patterns that most mere mortals don't catch. Betting patterns.
And a Phil Ivey, if you give him that opportunity and you just tell him, well, when I bet like this, I have absolutely nothing, he's going to put that into the puzzle. He's trying to piece together the puzzle that is John D'Agostino. You don't want to give him any pieces for free.
D'Agostino calls.
Check.
He's got 8-9 suited to Ivey's king-jack.
Ivey mixing it up, merely calling with
Yes.
the boss hand.
Yep, he did not raise before the flop with the king-jack.
Here is the flop. 5,
Wow.
7, 10.
7-5 diamond.
D'Agostino has picked up an up and down straight draw, a good semi-bluffing hand.
25,000.
On the other hand, Phil Ivey has 2 overcards.
Go.
And he's gotten out of way. And Michael, we saw that if he had checked this time, he was going to give Phil Ivey a chance to really get in trouble. If it came a jack on 4th Street there, Phil Ivey was going to make top pair with a king when John D'Agostino made his nut straight, and it could have gotten interesting. I don't blame John at all for betting there. But if he had checked, that might have been an opportune time to actually do it. He doesn't know what Phil Ivey has, obviously, so only we do.
And our viewers at home.
Right.
Yes.
We remind you, however, don't try calling your favorite player. We are on a convenient 5-minute delay. Security is very tight here.
Yeah, even extends to us, of
Right,
course.
and it goes beyond the 5 minutes. The audience, they were not allowed to bring in any cell phones. They can't have any contact with the outside world. If they leave the showroom where this tournament is being held, they are not allowed back in. So they can't find out information about a hand that happened half an hour ago and then tell their buddy, hey, you got bluffed 10 minutes ago. It may not help them that hand, but that would be too much information going forward. So there is very tight security here.
Interesting hand here.
Call.
Call.
Ivey 9-4 suited. D'Agostino Queen 9 suited.
And Phil Ivey raised the button, and D'Agostino called.
And the flop doesn't help
Ooh.
either player in regards to flush, but
However, that 9 is key because they obviously are both holding a 9.
Phil Ivey has the 2 pair.
That's right.
And he is not going to slow play here with the 3 clubs on board. This could be a large hand.
60,000.
Particularly if John D'Agostino wants to represent that he has the flush.
yeah,
And he calls.
he calls.
Well, we're approaching 200,000 in this pot already. Very key hand.
And the turn,
Card is
a
8.
queen.
Wow.
Boy,
But-
oh boy.
Very good card for John D'Agostino, but it's the 4th
Check.
club, and that's going to kill the action. That's the saving grace for Phil Ivey. I doubt if he'll lose any more on this pot. There, in fact, may not be any more betting.
Spades.
6 on the river. So D'Agostino has the winning hand.
Anybody who bets here risks getting raised.
Well, he is going to bet.
50,000.
1,000.
And he must have said to himself, I'm betting here, and you know what? If this guy raises me,
So be
I'm
it.
going for it, and I don't think he has a flush. I got to go with my read and trust it.
And this is a really nasty bet, Michael. He's only bet 50,000. There was almost 200,000 in this pot.
Yeah,
he's giving Phil Ivey 5-1, and he's sitting there with 2 pair. I don't know if he can get away from it for 50,000. This is a brilliant bet. This is the bet where you can bet with 2 pair with 4 clubs on board and actually get paid and earn an extra 50,000.
Yeah, I think Phil Ivey will call here because he is getting such a good price on the call. He only has to be right 1 out of 6 times. And here's a fellow who's right way more than that. Howard, could he be considering a raise here?
I don't see it. I just do not see it.
Folds.
Wow. Now that is a laydown right there, getting 5-1 with 2 pair. Great save by Phil Ivey, saving that 50,000.
World-class poker on display at the American Poker Championship.
And that set, still a big hand for John D'Agostino. Not as bad for Phil Ivey. Phil Ivey and young John D'Agostino.
It's funny, we keep calling him young John D'Agostino. Phil Ivey's in his 20s.
That's right. That's right. That's true.
Phil Ivey is, I believe, 27 or 28 years old. Let's take a look. But he burst on the scene about 5 years ago. He won a tournament when he was about 22. He beat Amarillo Slim in a pot limit Omaha tournament, won his first WSOP.
Howard, I was there for that tournament, and Amarillo Slim, as is his custom, never stopped talking. He's like the Lee Trevino of poker.
I know he is.
5,000.
And he tried to talk this kid out of the tournament, and it usually works on most people. Phil Ivey is not a good candidate to be coffee house.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
And he had maturity back then. Yes, he is 27 years old, but he really burst on the scene and became the Phil Ivey that we all know in 2003 when he won 3 World Series of Poker titles. He already has 4 WSOP titles at the young age of 27. It's phenomenal. And he really does have the heart of a warrior in tournaments. He just does not back down. When his back is to the wall, he just fights back. He just has the, he always looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves it. He's not feeling the pressure. This is what he lives for. The blinds have gone up to 8 and 16,000. This is going to drive the action even further and will force this tournament to a conclusion.
Call.
Maybe 12 to 16.
Check.
John checks it.
If John D'Agostino loses a sizable pot and gets down somewhere in the $250,000 range, the blinds every 2 hands represent 10% of his stack.
Flop is 8.
You can't let that happen.
3 different suits.
Ivey catches a pair here.
And we're starting to see Ivey catch a few flops.
25,000.
25,000.
Fold.
You call.
And when we say a few flops, it's kind of been like breaking even now lately. I mean, we saw D'Agostino catch that nice queen for his 2 pair, but it hasn't been completely one-sided lately. And of course, you know, the really key hand. It's so easy to forget about the key all-in hand, where 54% of the time this turn was going to be over 45 minutes ago, and we have to give John D'Agostino credit for that. At least he put himself in that beautiful position, and he still has a very good chance to win this tournament.
For the record, while I was watching John D'Agostino yesterday, trying to fight his way to our historic live final table, he was all in with 6s versus jacks. He had the 6s. He was a 4-1 underdog
Against Robert Williamson.
On the turn, he caught a 6, a miraculous 6. If he didn't catch it, he was out the door.
And we wouldn't be talking about him.
We would be talking about him, but this is the thing. Everybody, including Phil Ivey, has gotten lucky somewhere in this tournament. That's the nature of poker tournaments. You cannot win unless you catch a break.
Phil Ivey had to go all in earlier. It was
Put a
the first day I
48,000.
got here, and I was just happened to be watching him at the time he went all in, happened to catch it and stay in the game.
You know, and Barry, but it's what you do with your good fortune. Do you take that lucky 6 you hit, and do you go on and win the tournament or come in second, or do you just sort of hang in there and then just sort of move up a few spots in the ladder? John D'Agostino has taken that good fortune, and he's running with it. Right now, he has Ivey dominated before the flop.
Ace, queen, 5, 2 clubs.
And now there's, you
Check.
can see a 2% chance. It would have to come exactly a 6-6
Check.
or an 8-7 for Phil Ivey to win this pot.
Congratulations.
10.
10 of clubs.
They both have a flush draw.
Yeah.
John D'Agostino's
Check.
is the better one.
Yeah, but well, if he knew what Ivey had, he would check. I can't see him checking twice with second pair. This pot should be over.
40,000's a bet.
Of course, I never put any play behind past Phil Ivey. He could make a big raise here. I don't see him calling.
Wow. He's reaching for more chips.
He is.
And you want to know something, guys? I've noticed when Phil Ivey goes back to his stack and counts out more chips, he
Right.
almost never puts them back. They almost always go towards the center.
20,000.
$120,000 raise.
Colin.
Yeah.
Good
He's going
play,
all
John
in,
D'Agostino.
And that's over. Phil Ivey's already folded.
That's $100,000
Wins his pot.
in addition that he must ship over to John D'Agostino. Phil Ivey's
Michael, not simply $100,000.
the entire
The
pot.
$50,000 call
Right.
and the $120,000 raise. That was a $170,000 misstep by Phil Ivey.
Huge, huge blunder.
Well, weeknights, get ready for the next great thing in sports entertainment with Max Kellerman in IMAX on Fox Sports Net. Max won't pull any punches as he goes toe-to-toe with the biggest names in sports 5 nights a week. IMAX, weeknights at 6 and late night, only on Fox Sports Net.
And Barry, I believe we are pretty close to a 50-50 match here now with the chip counts. That was a big swing hand. That was a misstep by Phil Ivey. He's going to have to fight back after making that little mistake. But you know, poker is not a game of perfect play. We're not playing chess here. We have imperfect information. We're taking inferences. We're taking educated guesses about what we're up against. We're trying to gauge human behavior. You're going to make some mistakes.
Calls it 16,000.
Each player here with 9-8.
This will be a curious hand. We're going to have to see who wants to win this pot more.
The guy with the button, Phil Ivey.
And now look at this, 2%.
Yeah.
They each have a 2% chance of winning.
The guy with the button, Phil Ivey, has an inherent advantage, even though they have the exact same hand.
3
Well, this is a
clubs,
great
though.
flop
Yeah.
for Phil Ivey.
Great
He has the
flop.
club draw. And this is what we call in poker a
Check.
free roll.
Check.
He cannot lose the pot. You see a 0%
Phil Ivey
winning
cannot
chance.
lose, he can only
John
tie.
D'Agostino cannot win the pot. Phil Ivey can make the flush to win. Otherwise, he will get
25,000.
half.
5,000.
It's the kind of flop where John D'Agostino could get in a little bit of trouble. When you're playing
fact
heads up,
that
when you're playing heads up, a gut shot is the kind of hand where you can gamble.
He'd be a lot more inclined to make the call if he did have a club in his hand. He doesn't, so he folds. John D'Agostino's out. Phil Ivey scrapes them in. It's really fascinating when guys are dealt the same 2 cards, Howard, because then we learn the power of position. When you're starting with exactly equal holdings, who's the man? The guy who gets to act second.
Or, in this case, Michael, the guy who flops the flush draw.
Right. That always helps.
There
Well,
you
look
see
at
the
this,
chip count.
632 to
Yeah.
490.
Switched again.
Yes, John D'Agostino has the lead, and this hand, the only thing we do know is if the tournament ends, this hand, John D'Agostino will be our winner, and that is a very powerful psychological advantage.
Phil Ivey can go broke. John D'Agostino cannot. Again, D'Agostino has Ivey dominated. They share 1 card. The second card, John D'Agostino has 1 more little dot than Phil Ivey.
A very valuable
Raise, go to
spot.
48,000.
That makes it 48,000.
We do call the markings on the deuces through the tens spots. They're spotted cards as opposed to the painted cards, which would be the jacks, the queens, and the kings.
Call.
We call
And then the
it-
ace are just the pointed cards. You always want the points.
Yes. Here's the flop.
flop is
Ace, deuce, 9.
clubs.
A great flop for Phil Ivey. He was dominated.
Check.
He caught the 1 live card he had in his hand, a 9. And with a limp pot before the flop,
Ivey checks.
very likely that John D'Agostino does
60,000.
not have an ace. Phil Ivey knows this. I expect him to play aggressively from here.
Phil Ivey checked to John D'Agostino, specifically hoping his opponent would bet, put money in the pot. Phil Ivey deduced that that was probably the optimal strategy to extract the most amount of money on this hand.
He just calls.
And I think he's slow playing.
Yeah, I think he knows he has the best hand.
Yeah. Well, he may not know it, but he really
He suspects
he
it.
really suspects it. You never know.
The turn.
Cards
There's a jack.
Well, that is a very, very
Jack.
interesting card.
John D'Agostino now has a straight draw.
Yeah, and he's taken his free card.
Last card's
Didn't help.
Bad card for John D'Agostino. It's
Jack.
going to be real hard to represent that he has an ace. Phil Ivey, I think,
He's throwing
will.
him the full rope. He's just checked to John
Yeah.
D'Agostino.
Yeah,
That's what
if-
he's supposed to do.
And if D'Agostino bets here, he's going to lose.
For sure. There's no chance he can win this pot.
Check.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he figured it out. Very, very well played.
Nines and aces with the jack.
But you know, Phil Ivey is sending a message here. You see, I am not anxious. I am willing to check to you, let you bluff, and I'm not even going to raise you on the flop. I'm going to let you to continue to bluff, and that's going to slow John D'Agostino down.
And we'll see if D'Agostino got the message that Phil Ivey was sending. We're coming back. We welcome you back to Turning Stone Casino and Resort. This is the American Poker Championship. We're now down to 2. Started out the day, about 2.5, maybe 3 hours ago with 6 players. Randy Jensen, who started with the short stack, was the first one out. He wasn't too happy about it, but he kind of had to roll the dice. And then a bit of a surprise, I think, Howard.
Well, yeah. Well, Paul Phillips picked up the unlucky hand, ace-queen against ace-king, and he was knocked out.
And shortly after that,
Robert Williamson bid adieu. Then the pre-tournament favorite, John Juanda, got involved with an ace-10 against Phil Ivey's pair of aces, and aloha he went.
all right, now we've talked about the fact that this is a sparring session. Starting to be not so much a sparring session, but a little bit of rope-a-dope going on.
We expected Phil Ivey, one of the greatest players in the world, to just take apart his young 21-year-old inexperienced opponent, John D'Agostino. That hasn't been the case. What we have seen is world-class poker from both players, and we've been treated on live television to a display of how the best players in the world set up their man for the knockout.
And I'm staying with that boxing analogy. So far, we have seen each guy take maybe the other's best punch.
Yeah, and John D'Agostino is showing the heart to take those blows and keep fighting. Last night, after I saw him play, I was thinking to myself, we could see a coming-out party today. John D'Agostino may be introducing himself to the poker world.
I'm reminded of
And I think he probably is introducing himself to the poker world, and he's introducing himself to the poker world win or lose, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. People will remember him. And, you know, I think he's going to be back. He'll keep reminding us of who he is. This guy will be a force.
Just about dead even right now, as you saw the chip count.
And he seems to be yawning a bit. I don't know how he could be feeling that. You know, when I'm in a situation like this, the adrenaline's just raging through my veins. I couldn't be tired.
D'Agostino with the king-queen suited here.
Another good hand.
D'Agostino makes 40,000.
So Ivey limped on the button, and D'Agostino just raised 40,000 more. Just a quiet little $100,000 pot here. Let's see what happens.
which represents nearly 10% of the chips in play.
Yes. Well, that's what happens when the antes get it big.
2,
Great
4,
flop
9.
for Ivey.
Mm.
And now he has position.
Phil Ivey does.
Yes, he does.
Come on,
80,000.
80,000. What's that? All in.
All in.
What's that?
What's that?
Oh.
That is just, there is no more sickening feeling than that, Michael. You haven't even finished counting out your chips, and he says all in. I mean, that is called beating someone into the pot. He's trying to make his bluff, and he won't even let you finish the bluff. Well, what's that? I mean,
And
that's
we have a new
cost
chip
you
leader.
points.
Yep.
Yes, we do. Phil Ivey is starting to take, I believe he had a small lead going into that hand. Now he has in excess of a $200,000 and probably about $50,000 lead.
Yeah. I liked how John D'Agostino said, what's that?
Yeah.
Wait, did I hear that right? I'm not even done stacking up my chips.
Yeah.
All in was what I said, young man? Oh, okay. I fold.
So $738,000 in Phil Ivey's stack. And that would leave John D'Agostino with about 380. So we're getting close to about a 2-to-1 chip lead again for Phil Ivey.
King 4 suited for Ivey.
Yeah, D'Agostino's just going to take a hand off there. You know, it's really hard to come back. You know, Jack 6, that's a hand you maybe play, maybe you don't play. But after losing a really tough hand, it's kind of like, let's just take a deep breath. Let's wait for another.
And did you notice Phil Ivey took a long look at John D'Agostino after that last hand? What's he looking for, Michael?
Tournament coordinator, Michael
He's looking
Mount.
for a glass chin to crack. I mean, he's seen that this guy has given him a real tough heads-up battle, but there's a bit of fatigue coming in here. And I don't mean physical fatigue, and I don't necessarily mean even mental fatigue. I mean emotional fatigue. After a while, when you beat on a guy over and over and over, and every time he seems to get that lead, you take it right back from him, it wears you out. And I think he's taking a look at John D'Agostino and saying, is this guy ready to go?
I think you make a very good point. Phil Ivey is definitely gauging his opponent and seeing if he's weakening, because that's going to affect his decision-making process in the next few hands. Is he starting to show signs of steam? Is he more likely to play a hand recklessly? And that he will factor that into his decision-making process.
Another domination situation. This time Phil Ivey has the dominant hand.
16,000 flop.
And the flop.
Oh, my
How do you
goodness.
like that?
Well,
Set
wow.
of 2s for D'Agostino.
Well, Barry, that's a great flop for D'Agostino. And you see he's fast playing. He's just leading right out. Maybe tricking Phil Ivey into thinking he doesn't have a good hand.
Remember, last time he had 3 of a kind on the flop, he did fast play it.
And he
bet
got
the flop,
rewarded.
And he got rewarded. Surely he hasn't forgotten that. John D'Agostino knows that last time this played into Phil Ivey's natural tendencies to push back when provoked.
You know,
I
Michael,
don't mean this pejoratively, Howard. Phil Ivey's a bully. And I really don't mean that as a criticism.
Well, he
throws
stayed
the
out of
hand
the way.
away.
He learned
Yeah.
his lesson from the last
Yeah.
time.
And all of us who grew up with glasses and our noses in the books in the schoolyard learn eventually the best way to deal with bullies. And that is run.
Exactly.
No, it
Exactly.
actually, really, it is. You eventually have to stand up and slap him back.
Yeah, well, but, you know, he had the goods here. So he was trying to entice the neighborhood bully into just, you know, Phil Ivey's always trying to establish dominance at the table, and one of the ways he does it is by possibly on a flop like a deuce-deuce-3, raising with nothing and saying, no, you don't get to make the small bets to win these pots. I get to do it, and if you do it, I'm going to raise you. And that's a typical kind of situation where Phil Ivey may have raised him. I think it was a very good play to bet.
I agree.
Phil Ivey kind of smelled it and just got out of the way.
Ivey's sitting pretty here.
Yes, he is. And now after D'Agostino wins it, we saw him throw away a Jack 6, but now he wins a pot. He's feeling a little good, and now he's playing a Queen 6, essentially the same hand.
Calls. Phil Ivey's going to raise here, and will John D'Agostino be able to get away from the Queen 6?
Raises another 45,000.
That's the $45,000 question.
Yes.
John raises
Yeah.
down.
Well done.
Ivey wins the pot.
And it
he
helps
is-
because, I'm sorry, Howard, but it helps because he merely just smooth called there. He really only had 6,000 additional invested into that pot.
You know, Michael, I'm starting to see a little of the strain here, though. He has really been not stoic like a Phil Ivey, but pretty stoic, particularly for a 21-year-old. I think he's starting to get a little frustrated. He's just got a look of a man who's just not happy or comfortable. We can't blame him, but he really wasn't showing that about an hour ago.
Does a young player get to the point where you just want to get the game over with? I mean, obviously you want to win it, but you're going to push things a little bit, perhaps more than you should.
Barry, not only a young player, old experienced players too. I have been at many final tables myself.
Well,
Uh-oh.
Yeah, this could be it. Very likely that we will have an all-in situation right now.
And Phil Ivey will be a 4-to-1 favorite if both guys throw all their chips into the middle.
We've been seeing the frustration, and I can't even blame him for making a big raise here, but if he does, John D'Agostino will be getting his chips in the pot. He will be all in, needing a 5.
On.
Yeah.
That's it.
All-in call.
That's it.
Ivey called him instantly.
Instantly,
Another instant
yeah.
call.
Unless John D'Agostino hits a 5, it is all over. We will have a new champion.
2-5.
So here is,
You know, he was all in with his 2 6s against 2 jacks last night.
that's right.
See what happens.
Looking for a little deja vu.
On this hand right here.
This is for the championship. There's the flop.
No help.
7-2. No help is right.
He's going to need a 5 or a 6 and a 4 or a 6 and a 9. That's all that can help.
Now the turn.
Turn card is
Queen.
Queen.
It's down to a 6. I mean, a 5 is the only card that will help his hand.
2 cards left in the deck. Otherwise, Phil Ivey is our champion.
Staying pretty calm though as you look at the heart monitor. Not much you can do about it. It's all mechanical from here. And still no change of expression. So here's the whole tournament for John D'Agostino.
And
He
it
gets a
doesn't
3, and that's it. And the champion is Phil Ivey.
Some great playing today. Fantastic event. Phil Ivey, a more than worthy champion of the American Poker Classic.
John D'Agostino. Hey, great. That's the way.
So John D'Agostino will walk away with $250,000, and Phil Ivey still hasn't smiled. I mean, he's got the game face going here.
I think once he gets a big hug from Howard Lederer, he might smile.
That might do it, huh?
You know, it's really hard to just turn it off. You're so focused on playing.
And after you win all that money and sit at the table for so long, there's those 4 words that every player wants to make known. I've got to go to the bathroom. That's 5 words, I guess, isn't it? That's exactly what Phil Ivey was doing right there. He's excused himself, say, I'll be right back. Thank you very much for the money, but in the meantime, I got business. So we will come back. We'll wrap things up. We'll talk to both of the final table participants. We'll have the presentation of the $500,000 first prize from the $1 million purse. And we want to remind you before we get out of Dodge here that the Executive Vice President of Fox Sports Net Programming is George Greenberg. Vice President and Coordinating Producer of Production is Gary Garcia. The Senior Vice President of Broadcast and Field Operations is Andrea Berry. So a lot of help, a lot of great people working on this show, cast of thousands, and really interesting day, I think, of live television. It was unprecedented here in the United States, and I think the folks at home got a look that they haven't seen before this game, Michael.
The American public just discovered that poker is part science, part art, and hugely entertaining.
And your game continues to evolve before the eyes of the American public. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We'll come back, talk with the winner after this.